Welcome everyone, and I declare this meeting open at 2 o'clock. And special welcome to people in the gallery and also those joining via Zoom. Recordings of council meetings or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced or reused or retransmitted without the prior written consent of the General Manager. The meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory comments. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Dungara and Darug people, and respects the history and culture of elders both past and present. I have two requests for leave of absence. They are from Councillor McKibben and Councillor Watt. I'll move in a second of that. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Trembath. All those in favour? Passed. Declarations of interest. None from councillors. General Manager will be leaving during the consideration of the DA because he has been the chief negotiator and we're the governing body and we cannot be making those decisions with him present. Confirmation of minutes attached to the minutes for the extraordinary council meeting, Works and Finance, held on the 23rd of April. And the recommendations that the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 23rd of April 2024 be noted. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Trembath. Any comments from other councillors? Yes.
I'm just puzzled as to why we even need to have this, because we already confirmed it at the last meeting, and I'm puzzled as to why we're doing it again.
Reasonable.
It's just a follow-on from the previous extraordinary meeting. It's a practice that Oberon Council is undertaking. As it said, it's just to note as the other options have already been resolved. Agree.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed. Reports for decision. Item 5.1. Development application. 10/2024 17.1 Stage 2A, construction of the grandstand, use of temporary access, temporary car parking and stormwater infrastructure for the Oberon Sporting Complex. The recommendation is that Council approve development application 10/24 17.1 for Stage 2A, construction of building, grandstand, temporary access, temporary car parking, stormwater infrastructure for the sporting complex at Lot 2 in DP 1073827 and Lot 5 in DP 2364, being known as 31 O'Connell Road, Oberon. In accordance with Section 4.551A of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979, subject to the conditions contained within this report for the following reasons. The development is permissible within the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. Development complies with the Oberon Local Environmental Plan of 2013. The development is considered to be appropriate and will not impact the locality unreasonably, and a division called in accordance with Section 375A of the Local Government Act of 1993. I have a second mover and a second, please. Councillor Trembath, Councillor Graham. Sorry, I was having just a small. Councillor Trembath.
I don't really have a lot to say other than we're at the next stage of this development, and this is a very straightforward decision that we're making here. It doesn't mean that the premises can be occupied or anything, it's just the next stage of the build. And we are on a bit of a timeline, I believe, to be completed by middle of 25. So, and it's great to see that it's actually got to this stage so quickly and we're ahead of schedule. So I have nothing to add other than great to see it happening.
Councillor Graham.
Yes, I would agree. It's good to see that it's come through, and we really do need to pass it because otherwise the whole project goes down. So, yeah, I'm happy to support it.
Councillor?
I just, I'm in support of the project totally. I just had two questions, if I may. This states in there around the grandstands portion of the building. The grandstands, the second level of the clubhouse, isn't it? Like the ground level, and there's this level, the below ground, this level, and then the next level. When it states grandstand, it's incorporating that entire building, isn't it?
So it sits on the front of the building, the
Yeah.
club room up there,
And the other
training room down
underneath.
there.
So, my question was around, the infrastructure underneath, such as the plumbing, electricity and all that, is that already in place, or will that be placed in later?
My understanding is that the earthworks to put that sort of stuff in is there,
Okay,
but the physical pipes and power lines are not there yet. That comes with this BA.
oh, so that's with that. And the portion in the planning on page 57, of the report, I was just looking at the access door that leads into the restaurant kitchen. I just had some concerns around that. I don't know whether I should bring that up at this meeting or the next meeting, because that's the sports canteen, and I was just wondering what any future impact may be on a commercial restaurant kitchen and having a sports club just willy-nilly accessing into there. But that might be something for the next stage, perhaps.
The access is from the discussions we had with the rugby league club and others, is that was not going to be what happens.
Okay, no, that's all right. I just wanted to clarify those points, thank you.
Councillor McCarthy?
Yeah, I'm glad to see this move forward. Can't understand why we didn't have this previous to this, but anyway. But what I'd like to see if we can investigate is the possible connection of the sewer as a gravity feed rather than a pump out. As some of the councils indicated, there's possibly need for a workers shed somewhere down on the bottom end, which would require a toilet and facilities as well. So rather than have two pump outs or something like that, I don't think we're at the stage where it's critical, but I think we need to work with the person who's constructing the thing, seeing if we can't gravity feed the sewer rather than have a pump out. Because we know the cost of those from the one on Lenheim Avenue and Taranow Crescent.
The sewerage is the last bit to be connected, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay,
That's fine, it's time to talk about that, I think.
but now's the time to talk about it. We've seen what happened with the commentary tower and things like that.
Well, yeah.
It's not out of the water either, not a dead submarine either.
The issue of getting your requirements in early is how you make sure that doesn't happen, and we gave everyone the opportunity to get their requirements in, particularly the sporting clubs. It didn't quite happen that way, so.
But Mayor, Mr Mayor, you know the profile of the thing was like for like, and the other one has a commentary tower.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I just, I've had a look at a couple of the other facilities that similar, one in Ballaston, two in Ballaston, one in Orange, and had a talk to the grounds people and that there. And I concur with Councillor McCarthy, and I raised it at the last meeting, project meeting. But I think we do really need to look at starting to train or look at how we're going to look after this in terms of greenkeeper or qualified staff and that, because there's quite a lot of infrastructure there. I don't know, but from talking to the ones at Bush Rangers in Bathurst and George Park and out at St Pat's Club, and the Emus Club at Orange, it's pretty much more than a full-time position to look after them for one grounds person. It's one and a percentage, depending on what time of the year it is. So, I think we should look at, I know it's operational, but we should sort of start planning that we have some people that are qualified and know what they're in for, as far as looking after this is, and that also comes back to, we may need some kind of a building or a meal room, storage room, workshop facility or something down at the bottom end near Holborn Street, similar to what we put in the common for the machinery and that, because, and that'll probably, the reason I raised that is, at the last project meeting, was that we'll need water, power and more than likely sewage in that area, even if the shed and the workshop or whatever comes later. But, in this stage, when we're doing this part of the DA, for all that infrastructure, we should probably plan to put something somewhere for, and down in that bottom purple street corner is probably the ideal and a practical position for it. They're just a couple of concerns that I had, that we don't want to get lost and then come on later on, it's a major expense then to do it, whereas if we do it now, and it's not such a big deal to connect to it.
So are you proposing to add something to the DA? Or are you just saying, or just
No, I'm
for
just-
consideration?
I'm just flagging it up that it's something we probably should talk about at the next project meeting, which I think we should have fairly shortly as well.
Look, I agree with both your concerns. I think that most of us have turned our attention to how do you maintain this particular beast, and I agree that the groundsman, for want of a better term, is going to have to know his stuff and certainly perhaps need more.
There's certainly some specialised stuff there. It's not just a matter of mowing the football field. There'll be other infrastructure there that'll need regular maintenance as well. So it's something we should look at because it will be an expense down the track.
Something that's good like this comes with an expense as well.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah, and I'm more than happy for that. I'm so pleased it's going ahead. But we need to sort of have either people trained, or we need to start looking whether we need to employ an apprentice greenkeeper or grounds person or whatever. I don't know what the terminology would be these days. We need to look a little bit down that path, I think.
All right, any other comments, observations or requests? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Can someone let the general manager know what's going on? Please, General Manager.
Thank you.
All right, item 5.2, proposed heritage listing of the O'Connell Avenue of Trees. The recommendation is that council update the draft state heritage inventory sheet for the Avenue of Trees at O'Connell, reference 2210207, to prepare a planning proposal for the individual listing of the Avenue of Trees at O'Connell as a local item for inclusion in Schedule 5 of the Oberon LEP of 2013. And 3, advise the local community of O'Connell to consider liaising with Heritage New South Wales based on the state level assessment of 1998 CMP, with a longer term view of nominating the Avenue of Trees for inclusion separately on the State Heritage Register. Move on second, please. Councillor Trembath.
Can I second with an amendment? No,
No.
that's all right.
You second it?
No, second. With the amendment should the first one.
Yeah.
Consider.
Councillor
Consider
Trembath. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Trembath.
I move this because it is of great importance to the community as a whole. But I think that we had a request to put an interim heritage order on, and I fully understand why we can't do that. We covered that at the heritage meeting, and for those that in the gallery that may not know, but because it's already protected within the conservation area, it can't have that happen. But the report that was brought to council has pushed this along and made it important again to everyone. The community is very invested, in particular in O'Connell, but the biggest, and we need to ensure that we have this additional protection. It's rare, of historical significance, and all the supporting documentation that you saw in your papers came about with a lot of research from the O'Connell Community Group. They revealed some reports that had been with council and through time had got lost. That was the Newscape report. Also the National Trust listing. So it's actually enabled us to get to a much better place that we could actually go for state heritage listing of the avenue. And this is just the next stage of, within the conservation area, this is an item that's listed and it gives us an additional layer of protection. And yes, hopefully that we could progress to the state heritage listing. That would be the end result of this, but I think this is taking it to the next stage. And I just hope that all councillors support this. It's something, it's not just for O'Connell, it's Oberon. And it is rare and we should protect it.
Thank you. Councillor Hope?
Yes, I'm happy to second the recommendation. As Councillor Trembuff had elaborated, it is quite a significant avenue in our local government area. A lot of people, both in O'Connell and the broader LGA, are quite invested in protecting this avenue. I did want to propose an amendment, but I know I can't, but I wanted to add that Transport New South Wales be contacted to request their assistance in listing this as a state heritage item. Considering I've seconded, I can't do that, but I do think that that needs to be in the recommendation, that council contact Transport New South Wales and request their assistance in adding this to the State Heritage Register. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Covey?
Don't have to contact them because they own the road. And I'm happy with this registration, but there's always got to be the safety thing there. I take it, the comment from our local member, Paul Toole, to trim these trees is not what's saying. Road safety's first. And as far as significant with these trees, if you go down a Belvar gateway, 2 trees were taken out to make that gateway there. So these trees at the time weren't significant. I used to trim them trees down the church end away from the power line. And that was Paul Toole's father that used to send us there. But to list these trees is one thing, but we can't diminish from the safety of the clearance we need for vehicles going through there. I'm supportive of it, but from now and then, they've got to be trimmed for safety reasons. Some of the trees are actually ugly.
That's not the issue.
That's not the issue, I know that, but, you know. But the comment you see from the local member is just ludicrous, and I've responded personally to him, but, yeah, look, this is a good idea, but, and I thought there was others in Australia, but I thought there's a couple down in Tasmania did the same sort of thing, but anyway, but Transport for New South Wales would be notified because they own the road, not us.
Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sure we all agree that that avenue is important, and none of us on council or nobody in the community wants to see it lost or damaged. The bit I want to ask a couple of questions about is just to be sure that if this is passed, to be clear in my mind as to what extra protection it actually gives the avenue, because that's what I'm not clear about from the report. So there was an attempt last meeting to jump in and declare an interim heritage order, and then we subsequently find out that we can't do that. And so it's just as well we didn't. I'm puzzled as to why GML recommended it in their report, since it's not an option that's available to us. But on page 96 halfway down, it talks about the existing listing under the LEP. And it says because of that listing, an application would trigger the need for the applicant to adequately assess the impact of the proposals. So there's already that protection in place at the moment. So we're proposing 3 additional layers of protection, and I'd like to understand the legal effects of each of those items. So recommendations 1, 2 and 3. Is it extra protection, or is it simply duplicating the protection that's already there? So I wonder if either the GM or the director could comment on each of those protections that are being proposed.
Through the chair, it's the question that we've always posed, because we're of the consideration that under the urban conservation area there was protection for the trees. Having an individual item listed in its own right would mean, would mean that any, I'm trying,
Have a big cup of water.
would mean that any assessment, should something need to be done to that item, would need to go through an independent assessment. Under the urban conservation area, they need to do that regardless, which is yet to be done for an application of this that we're talking about now. But it doesn't preclude someone coming along and seeking an option to do something to that item.
Yeah, and that's my point. I assume with all of them, it doesn't mean that nobody can ever touch a tree in that area. It just means that there is a process they need to go through prior to being able to touch them. So there is already a process that people have to go through. And I'm trying to understand what extra processes would come into place if these 3 things are adopted.
Through the chair, given the processes that have occurred from an application that's currently before the state, and the fact that it was missed, at least that item having its individual numbering may give it some trigger that has previously been missed. So if it's an awareness thing from our perspective, that's a bonus. In terms of will it stop it from being removed, the answer to the question is I don't know, because an application would need to be assessed by an appropriate person
You don't know
at any point, or who that person, correct.
Because I assume under the existing protection, if there is a proposal, the applicant has to assess the impact. I assume that would come to council.
Yep.
But these 3 would have to go to somebody else.
No.
They come to council.
No, at a local level, it comes back to council. At a state level, it's issued by the state under what they call a Section 60 application.
So recommendation 3, if it was on the State Heritage Register, it would be assessed by the state.
Correct.
But numbers 1 and 2, updating the draft State Heritage Inventory Sheet and preparing a planning proposal for local item for inclusion in Schedule 5 of the Oberon LEP, either of those would come to council.
We do that application and then we submit it to the state.
We do that application
Ourselves.
to prepare the planning proposal.
Correct.
But that's not the question I'm asking. If we have prepared the planning proposal and it gets listed on Schedule 5 of the Oberon LEP, and then someone comes along wanting to do something, who then decides if they can do it?
Well, it'll depend on what it is that they're looking to do. In terms of using it as an option to cut, remove, shape, because they're looking at, well, okay, maybe wind turbines going through there, it would be done through what they call designated development, which is currently what's being assessed now. If someone wanted to do something with it, say a landowner wanted to remove one of the trees for safety for an access provision, it'd sit with us because it'd be a local item within our local environmental plan.
And that happens on a regular basis anyway, exactly what Councillor McCarthy was saying. Every few years, contractors come through and trim them to maintain that clearance And so nobody's suggesting that that can never happen again. It's just a matter of understanding what the processes are to enable that to happen.
So through the chair, and to answer the question, the listing of the item means there's an additional process that would need to go through should someone want to do something to that item. I'll take the trees away and just say there's a house that's listed as an item and someone wants to put an extension on that item, which would mean they'd have to consider the integrity of the heritage listing. They would lodge an application with us to do that, and it'd get assessed through a heritage advisor to make sure the impact of that is not untenable for council.
So it basically all comes back to council regardless. So even as things stand at the moment, any proposal to touch the tree would come back to council. If these things are adopted, it would still be coming back to council.
So what this is asking is to have the avenue of trees considered as an item in its own right, like a house would be.
Yeah, no, always recommendation 2 is.
Within that. The state inventory sheet has nothing to do with state listing. It's unfortunate that that's its name, but that's what it's called. And updating that sheet allows us to go into that second phase of considering it as the local item. So what the 1, 2 and 3 indicate in that instance is that the first thing we need to do is update the state heritage inventory sheet, which is the local item significance. It's unfortunate in its naming, but that's what it's called. So our heritage advisor say update that. Then from that, because of what you've already got and what you've updated it to, the next step simply is to lodge the planning proposal to have it included as a existing
And the number 3 is a little bit separate because that's encouraging the community to look at a state heritage listing.
And that is purely because council would have done 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The third step is because we don't own the land, it's more of a engage with that community and try and get some buy-in to have them also send requests to have that item looked at a much higher level than what it is locally.
And I understand number 3 is a bit different to numbers 1 and 2, and I'm leading up to a possible amendment, but I have another question first, and it relates to halfway down page 97, financial implications. It says resources are likely to be needed to be allocated in 24-25 financial year if the recommendations are endorsed. Do we have any idea how much resources, how much extra resources would be needed?
Not at this point in time, which is why we flag it to say that we're going to have to bring this back to you anyway if a significant resource is required to do that. We're just flagging it, so there's work involved, and that work may have to be contracted, and if so, we'll come back to you and say, this is what we will look to do in a separate report.
Which is why I was wondering about it, and I hope no one takes this as in any way diminishing the importance of doing these things, but I just think it should be a bit the other way around. I think we should understand, before we decide to go ahead, and then possibly be obliged to find extra money, and especially if it's not really adding much to the protection, I would have thought we should know what those extra costs are and where we're going to get the money from, given that there's no imminent threat. We haven't got a queue of trucks waiting to come through there. Each of all those 3 items are going to take some time anyway. The wind towers hasn't even been approved or decided yet. So I'll try putting an amendment and see if I can get a seconder and see if I get support. So my amendment would be to replace numbers 1 and 2. I'd leave number 3 there, which might become number 2. And numbers 1 and 2 would become that a further report be provided on the estimated extra costs involved in updating the draft state heritage inventory sheet and preparing a planning proposal for the listing of the avenue of trees at O'Connell as a local item for inclusion in Schedule 5.
Sorry,
Yes,
you
I'll-
lost me,
Yes,
you lost me
Yeah,
after
that's it.
state heritage inventory sheet, sorry,
Yeah, all right, comma,
yeah,
and preparing a planning proposal for the listing of the avenue of trees at O'Connell
yeah.
as a local item for inclusion in Schedule 5 of the Oberon LEP 2013.
Okay, and two is,
2 would be 3 currently, so.
The existing 3 would become number 2. And the existing
sorry, when I've changed it, I don't know what that is. Can you just tell me which one it was? Read the line. What was the existing 3?
Advise the local community.
Okay, thank you, that becomes 2. Thank you. And your number 3?
That's it.
Nothing else?
That's it, so we now just have two motions, or 2 parts of the motion. Just in the first line after the word provided, it should say on, it's just got a letter N. It's fine.
Provide, can you say, provide a further report?
Yes, that,
Say,
but,
provide a further report.
yeah.
Right, so are you happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
You're the mover, do I have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy?
So I've mostly said what I wanted to say, but just to stress that it is in no way trying to stop extra protection being provided. It is just that if it doesn't add a lot, and if it turns out it's going to cost us a fair bit of money, which is currently not allocated, then we should know that before we go ahead. That is better than getting a report back later saying it's going to cost all this extra, but we've already decided to do it. So I think it's a better way around to know the costs first, and particularly in current circumstances where we are not aware of any immediate and imminent threat to the avenue anyway. I think there is still a fair bit of lead time, and I don't imagine it's going to take very long to come back to us with some estimated costs. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McCarthy?
That's pretty straightforward, Mr Mayor, thank you.
I'd like to speak against the amendment. One of the reasons is,
Yes, Councillor Hayden, you may.
sorry, I thought
You have
that,
been recognised.
sorry.
Please go ahead.
I would like to speak against the amendment. Fact is, this is, I think, around the 4th time this has come back to council for a report. This is costing staff time, money, getting another report on another report and another report. We've had the meeting with the Heritage Advisor, everything's quite clear. I am speaking against the proposed amendment. I don't think that people are taking into their thought processes the angst within the community and the broader community. There is a risk, there is an unsettled community that want this to have its individual protection mechanism in place. That's what the original recommendation has there, and then we would get a further report on the costings and financials, as I already asked that question earlier this morning. So I don't support the amendment, I support the original recommendation.
You, Councillor Trembath?
I'd like to speak against it and just give a little bit of reason behind it. We do need this additional layer of protection because what triggered this is that it got missed when the EIS went in for Paling Yards. Completely missed, and it's only because it's been brought to Planning Department's attention, it would have just passed through possibly, and we don't have our trees protected then. So by putting in place this additional layer and then letting the community go for the state, but all of the groundwork has actually been done, and that's basically has been said in the Heritage Advisor's report. If you go through all of those attachments that were provided in our papers, it's all there. There's just some updating to be done, and yes, it probably is our Heritage Advisor required to do a little bit of work, but not a very intense part of work. We're not having to employ someone new to do it. We're not actually putting any burden on the Planning Department to do this. So, and the danger is imminent. The Independent Planning Commission meeting will be at the end of this year for this project. So we do need to act and listen to our community. This is what they want. They want these trees protected and they want it as an individual item. So I just request that you give it a bit more thought, and a report will come back. It's going to give us the costs and we'll have to decide. But I don't think you're going to find that it's going to be $100,000. It's a few hours of someone's time, then through the chair, if the general manager could probably give some indication.
Through the chair, and apologies for the director and I talking, I align it to the planning proposal we put forward for the Leagues Club change, when we added an additional permitted use into that, the table. And at that point in time, to do the complete planning proposal was approximately 10,000. So it'd be, I can't see it being that much. As I said, the reason why it was earmarked in the report was to highlight the fact that there will be a cost incurred.
Yeah.
That's the rationale.
Councillor Perry?
Yeah, could I ask a question? I'm all for protecting the trees, and if we get back to it, I'd like to speak on the original motion if we get back to it. But in all the documentation I've read for Paling Yards, I haven't seen any written documentation to council or from the proprietor or the proponent that the trees are going to be cut down. Do we have actually any notification?
In the report.
So through the chair, one of the issues that council raised in its submission during that submission period, as did a lot of other ones.
Yeah, I read all that, but there's nothing back from the proponent
Not at this
to
stage.
say that they're going to actually cut the trees down.
No, not at this stage.
Is there? I haven't seen anything.
There's the LiDAR.
I haven't read the lot either, probably, but I don't think anybody would have.
Can I speak again?
Through the chair, it's quite clear that additional work needs to be done from a applicant's perspective in terms of what they do. They have done some assessment, and there is a statement that there's going to have to be some removal of
Actual
canopy.
That's trimming. That's not removal
No,
of
they
trees.
said removal of trees.
The potential removal of trees as well.
Okay, well, I haven't seen that. I haven't read it if I have seen it. That's it, that answers the question I had. Yeah, yeah, there's no drama with that.
I'm going to speak against this proposal, this amendment. I think that the case is pretty clear cut that we need to take the course of action we've put there. But I have a question for the General Manager. Who pays for the current trimming of the trees when it has to happen? Being a state road.
It would form part of the Transport for New South Wales arrangements through our maintenance contract with those.
And the only maintenance or interaction we have with the trees per se is that we do the tidying up of the verges around the trees.
That's
and
correct.
maybe cutting the suckers off at the bottom.
That's correct.
So any costing at this stage would be no different for us as a council, and Transport for New South Wales would still have responsibility for any other pruning of the trees.
Yes, I'm of that belief, based on what you've just said, yeah.
Okay. And I would note that no matter what, that no level of protection is absolute. Unfortunately.
That is correct.
All right.
So I'm happy with the original recommendation rather than the amendment.
Thank you. Right reply?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just wanted to stress again, it was said that this is not a lot of extra work. Well, if it wasn't much extra, then we wouldn't have that statement in the financial implications saying that resources are likely to be needed to be allocated in the 24-25 financial year. If it was just a little bit of work, it would be absorbed, and that was the point of my making the amendment in the first place, just to know how much we were going to be up for before deciding to do it, rather than potentially having to come back later and we didn't think it was going to be that much. So that was the point. Stressing again that I'm in no way trying to stop the extra protections.
All right, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? The amendment is lost. Now we return to the original recommendations. Councillor McKechnie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just going back to Councillor Hayden's original point of contacting Transport for New South Wales, I think it's probably a good idea, but what I'd like to see is a couple of other issues raised with them. This issue with protecting the trees has come up several times in my lifetime that I can remember. Power line relocation, road realignment, when it went to a state road and they widened the road, realignment for the other bridge, all those sorts of things. I think we should be looking to do this for the last time, and my idea would be, it might be a bit silly, but I think, why don't we look at propagating new trees from what's there, taking some cuttings off, propagating the same species and the same number of trees, or whatever. Talk to the horticultural departments at CSU, the one fairly large one at Wagga and a fairly large one at Armadale. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have it as a project to propagate it, considering it's a memorial. And we asked Transport for New South Wales to look at resuming or speaking to the landholders on both sides, or the landholder on both sides, who was also very pro looking after the trees, and is also a good friend of council. And I think that propagated trees should be planted 10 metres back on either side of the existing trees. Then when in the next generation, when they're a suitable size and that, the original trees be removed, and then the road would be probably need to be upgraded to a 2-lane road or something. I don't know, I'm looking probably 20, 30 years down the track, but every 10 or 15 years something comes up and we have to go through this. Like it's been it's been an ongoing thing for as long as I can, I've lived here all my life, and I've seen it several times. And no one wants to see the trees gone or damaged in any way, you know, but I think we should look at how they're not going to live forever anyway. Some of them have already been replaced. So if we look further down the track of maybe having a second row of trees further away from the carriageway might be an ideal solution long term. But that's just a thought I had. I've just got too much time on my hands, so it seems too interested in it.
Through the chair, the Musescape report outlines that that's what that's what you should be doing anyway. You probably picked it up from the myriad of documents you've been reading through for the last week, but yes, that's what one of the options that are long-term options that are available.
But I'm fully in support of the original motion.
Councillor Graham, you have anything to add?
I'm just in support of this
Okay.
particular recommendation.
Do you want to write a reply?
I just wanted to respond to
The
the
response to Councillor McKechnie?
regarding propagation. There's been two community efforts. One was air potting that was done last year, and prior to that there was some work done and the damaged trees were taken out. And then near the RFS they have propagated more trees there, and they got used then to come back into the avenue. So there is that ongoing work, and they did identify that back in Orange, I think it was, the original trees were grown, and that's sort of disappeared now at the tape wherever it was actually done. But yeah, there are attempts done on a regular basis, but if we could get Transport for New South Wales to assist us more in exactly what you're saying, that would be of great benefit as well.
There was, I vaguely remember, probably 30 years ago, they were, when my father-in-law worked at the experimental farm in Bathurst, they propagated quite a few of them for the avenue there.
That was it, yes.
We have one more.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I also just wanted to respond to Councillor McKechnie, and for everyone's benefit, I guess it's about 20 years ago, a decision was taken by both council and what was then called RTA to do exactly what Councillor McKechnie has suggested. There was a report showing the existing trees declining over time. Council and RTA decided to propagate from the existing plant stock. I don't know whatever happened to those, but they were being propagated. And that was the plan, and plant new avenues further out, so eventually when the existing ones got too in bad condition, they could be removed, but then that got changed and never went down. But that's just a bit of background for
Thank you for that information.
If I may, I endorse what Ian said, but the RTA said, if we want the ground, the council had to buy it, not the RTA. And that's why the London plane trees were down there, because we had an engineer that couldn't recognise the actual trees that were there. And and now that bloke's working on their silver plant, isn't he? But anyway, if we've got to extend the avenue of trees, we might have a landowner that's more passive now, but when Len Hill owned the ground at that time, he said no. He couldn't purchase the ground.
All right, I think
Thank you.
everyone's had a good
Had a fair
say.
crack.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. All right, there being no other business, I'll close the meeting at 2:48. Recording.
Councillor.